Shalom, shalom. Okay, this is the official video summary of on the one woman bride of Messiah doctrine. Okay, so I mentioned in that other 40-minute one, I told you the progress of how I got to that point of that particular doctrine, and now this video will actually condense a lot of the videos that I've done on it over the past, since February last year. So I'm just starting to give you verses, scriptures that you would find in other videos in a more longer, extended version. But this is going to be the summarized version. So if you're new to the channel, and like I said, I have over 190 videos, so that would be a lot, very time consuming, and your time is precious, my time is precious. So as was requested by a subscriber, I'm going to go ahead and make this summary video. I wrote out as many of the verses that I could. I went through my old notes, so just trying to condense everything. So let's go ahead and pray. Abba Yah, I pray that you would just help me to deliver this message with clarity, with soundness of mind. I pray that your word would be made clear to your people. A lot of this coming from the Ibri, from the Hebrew language. And I pray that your people will go back and search it out and be good Bereans as well and get confirmation from you in all things, for you are our Father. You are a good Father. Toda Rabbas, Abba, Toda Rabbah. Thank you so much. I pray that you be with my tongue, you be with my mind. Help me to speak all that you desire for me to teach in this video, for your glory, for your name's sake. May your will be done according to as it is in heaven, so also on earth. B'Shem Yehushua HaMashiach HaNazarene, in the name of Yeshua, the Messiah, the Nazarene. Amen. Okay, so, I feel the Abba's presence. Okay, this is beautiful. All right, so we're going to stop at the top. Okay, so the way that, as I mentioned in my other video, the way Yah started the process about discovering the truth behind the one woman bride doctrine, as I mentioned, is with Song of Solomon. Okay, but the one thing I will say, I'm going to read the Song of Solomon. I'm going to focus on these verses because when I first read Song of Solomon 3 times, he kept telling me, pay attention to the way she talks. Pay attention to the way she talks. And so that led me to going to the other verses I will share with you. Okay. So let's go to Song of Solomon. I'm just going to look at Song of Solomon chapter 2, verse 7. Song of Solomon chapter 3, verse 5. And Song of Solomon chapter 8, verse 14. Okay, those are just some examples there. So I'm going to turn to, and I'm going to use the other scriptures I used initially. So it'll read more like a King James version. Or actually, I could just pull it up. I could pull up the Aramaic too. I don't know how we'll read in the Aramaic though, but okay. Let me see. I'm trying to find it. Bear with me here. I have a lot of it bookmarked, but it's a lot of it bookmarked. So I'm just going to be flipping pages. Okay, so I mentioned Song of Solomon chapter 2, verse 7. One thing that she says in that one, verse 7, it says, I charge you, O you daughters of Jerusalem, or Jerusalem, by the roes and the hinds of the field, that you stir up not nor awaken my love until he please. Okay, now the Aramaic doesn't read that way. Actually, it's a slight difference. Let me go to the Aramaics. I like I said, it's my new favorite. Okay, so I'm gonna pull it up that way. Let's see. And chapter 2, verse, and I'm using Bible Hub. I said verse 7, right? Okay. Okay. So, um, it says here, I'm reading from the Lamsa Bible. I adjure you, daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by young roads of the field, that you stir up nor awaken my love until she pleases. Okay. And actually the word is she, but say it, because a haba is feminine. The word for love is feminine. So really it's talking about love until she pleases. It's because love, a haba, is a feminine tense word, or a feminine gendered word. Okay. I'll read it again. It says, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the young roes of the field, that you stir up not, nor awaken my love until it please. Okay, the next verse is chapter 3, verse 5. Okay. Chapter 3, verse 5, Song of Solomon. Okay, going back down to the Aramaic. Once again, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the young roes of the field, that you stir not up nor awaken my love until it pleases. Okay? And last one, Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 14. Okay? Oh, that's something. Okay, that's for a different part. Okay, that's for a different part, for a different verse. That has to do with the vineyard. Okay? I'll get to that later. That's not about that one. I think it was verse. Oh, I'm sorry, verse 14. Duh, I actually wrote down the right verse, but I sorry. Salakli, forgive me. Okay. Um, Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 14. Make haste, my beloved. Be like a gazelle or a young hart upon the mountain of spices. So, in that case, I told ya that's a lot of deer talk. And so he referred me to like which tribe is referred to as a deer. And obviously that would be the tribe of Naphtali. So that's when I start looking into the verses regarding the tribe of Naphtali. Okay. So I looked at Genesis chapter 49, verse 21. Hold on here. And I'm going to pull up my old notes because I broke this down in the Hebrew and then put it back into English based on what the Hebrew is saying. And so it reads much better than these other versions. So I'm going to read from what I wrote back then. Okay. As I said, I bookmarked these, so it shouldn't be too long. If you read from the KJV, it will say, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. Now, if you break it down based on the Strong's Concordance, you get Naphtali is a female deer sent out, similar to a dart or a weapon, the giver of beautiful, brilliant, wordy, talkative speech. Okay? Okay. So now let's go to, as I mentioned, we're going to go look at Genesis chapter 49, verse 21, and I have it in my notes. So I'm going to read that. Okay, so initially it reads, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He gives goodly words. Now, based on the Strong's Concordance, it translates from the Strong's Concordance meaning, Naphtali is a female deer sent out, similar to a weapon or a dart, the giver of beautiful, brilliant, wordy, talkative speech. And if you decode it based on the Hebrew gematria, you get this meaning out of the same verse, but you break down each Hebrew letter because each Hebrew letter has a meaning to it, and it forms a hidden prophecy within the actual sentence. Okay, so it forms this prophecy in that same verse of Genesis chapter 49, verse 21. Continue speaking the covenant or cross and teaching worship. Reveal what the power of his worship teaches, to cut off or rightly divide destructive teachings and show the life of the covenant son, the chief mighty leader. He acts to destroy intimidating sharp speech. Okay, now the other verse pertaining to the promises that's prophesied to Naphtali, it can be found. I think that one was done by Yaakov, I believe. Israel gave that to his sons. He gave a blessing to his sons before he passed. And then this one is by Moses, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 23. Okay? And this one reads, KJV style, of Naphtali, he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full with the blessing of Yahuwah, possess the west and the south. Okay? Based on the Strong's Concordance, you get the following. And of Naphtali, he said, O Naphtali, satiated, glutted with delight, pleasure, full of her presence or blessings from Yahuwah, the west and the south, you possess or occupy or inherit. So there's a particular Hebrew word there, which is the last word in this particular sentence in Ibri, Ye Rasha, which actually can be feminine or masculine tense. Some versions, I think Bible Hub says it could be like you, masculine singular, and then feminine third person singular. Okay, so one would read you, masculine singular, possess the west and the south, or she shall possess, third person, she shall possess the west and the south. Okay. Funny enough, obviously, the translators translated masculine because they're like, oh, it's talking about Naphtali, but not all verbs have the ability to do both male and female. That particular word does in this case. It could be used as masculine singular or feminine singular. Okay. Now, the hidden prophecy behind that particular verse, Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 23, is the following. Okay. So remember, every Hebrew word has Hebrew letters, and every Hebrew letter is a number, and you can decode other meanings from that. Okay, Hebrew is a very divine language, and so it has layers to it. So you just can't look at a Hebrew word and just go, it means that. It could have three meanings to it. You have to pull the layers back in Hebrew. It's a very divine, unique language. Okay, so I'm going to read to you what the coded prophecy is in that verse I just read to you. Okay, and the coded prophecy is, there's two ways you can code it. I can code it without decoding Naphtali's name. I'm going to read that way, or I can decode it with Naphtali's name. I'm going to read the second time with Naphtali's name decoded. Okay, the first one. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, making covenant with the head that desires to add heirs or plant seeds. Your faithful head bows down in covenant. The mighty arm and chief door adds many to overthrow the destroying head. Or you can have it this way. And of Naphtali he said, Oh, make a binding covenant to open or scatter seeds or speak life, coming together and making making covenant with the head that desires to plant seeds or add or secure heirs. Your faithful head bows down in covenant. The mighty arm, hand, and the chief door adds many or raises up many to overthrow the destroying head. And the base gematria, Hebrew gematria numbers reads like this. And of Naphtali he said, "O Yahuwah, Yahuwah enters into new union with you, completing favor with man." All right. So that was the basis in which Yah started me on. Okay, so he started me. I just started with Song of Solomon, and that led me to looking at the deer tribe and decoding it that way. Okay. Now, what really caught my attention thereafter was the Aramaic version of Matthew chapter 25, verse 1. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, the book that I have, the Aramaic Bible in plain English, the guy named Glenn David, he talks about how he had been compiling this, the New Testament and the Old Testament from Aramaic into English for about 15 years. And the one thing he concluded from his studies and translation is that Aramaic, the New Testament in Aramaic is the original form of the New Testament, not the Greek, but the Aramaic. And obviously there is some Hebrew within the Aramaic because, it's just how the blend of cultural talk is. Okay, so Matthew chapter 25. All right, verse 1. Okay, only in the Aramaic. Okay, the Aramaic actually preserves the original script. Okay, it reads like this in the Aramaic. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to greet the bridegroom and the bride. Or in this case, in the Aramaic Bible in plain English reads, then the kingdom of heaven will be compared to 10 virgins. The same took their lamps and went to meet the groom and the bride. Okay, so here we see that the 10 virgins are not referred to as the bride, but that the 10 virgins are going out to meet the groom and the bride. All right, and so that right there helped me to realize that, because obviously if you've been raised in the church, you have been given the impression that the 10 virgins are the bride that the bridegroom is coming to get, but that's not the case. Okay, and the Aramaic scriptures show you that. Now, some other things he had me look into regarding the tribe of Naphtali is some of the other prophecies in the testament of the 12 patriarchs. So all the 12 sons of Israel had a testament written out before they passed away. So you have 12 of them in total, and I'm going to be reading from two of the testaments. One is the testament of Naphtali, and the other is the testament of Yehudah. Okay, the testament of Naphtali, chapter 8, verse 2 and 3. The testament of Naphtali, chapter 8, verse 2 and 3. Oh, another important thing, I'm sorry, before I read the testament of Naphtali, in conjunction with Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 23 that I just read to you, possess the west and the south. I mentioned in my other video, nowhere else do you see the phrase the west and the south mentioned anywhere else in your canonized Bibles. But if you go to the book of Adam and Hawa, the book of Adam and Eve, chapter 15, you see this term, the west and the south, mentioned in that book. Now we'll read it, okay? And I actually read it the previous year, the book of Adam and Eve the previous year. So I recognized that when I saw the west and the south, I said, wait a minute, that reminds me of what was mentioned in the book of Adam and Eve, okay? So if you, the book of Adam and Eve, chapter 15, verse 2, and it reads this way. This is the way it reads. And this is Hawa. This is Eve talking. So she's giving an account of how they fell in sin, how they fell away from their original state. Okay, so she's telling her son what happened. Seth. She's telling Seth what happened. And she says this: when we were guarding the garden, each one the portion that was given to him from Elohim, I guarded my lot, which was wonderful to me, the west and the south. And Satan, this is verse 3, went to Adam's lot where the male beasts were, for Elohim divided the beasts to us. All the male beasts he gave to your father, and all the females he gave unto me. Okay, so her section of the garden was the west and the south. And obviously, you see that same coin term, the west and the south, mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 23. Okay, now I'm trying to remember. Okay, the testament of the 12 patriarchs. Okay, so then he led me on to the testament of the 12 patriarchs. Naphtali chapter 8, verse 2 and 3. So I'm going to turn to that first. Okay, so there's a prophecy that Naphtali gives to his children. He gives them instructions, and this actually is a prophecy of a future time. He urges his children to do the following. Chapter 8, verse 2 and 3, and I'll probably maybe read 3 and 4 too. Do you also, therefore, charge your children that they be united to Lewi and to Yehudah, for through them shall salvation arise unto Israel, and in them shall Yaakov be blessed. Okay. So there he is urging his children to be united, to be made one. So in Hebrew, when you use the word united, is actually saying be made one with Lewi and Yehudah. Okay, because salvation is going to come through those two tribes. And obviously, this we know this has to be about the Messiah and not literally about Dawid, because Dawid was only of the lineage of Yehudah, whereas Yeshua, the Messiah, he was from the lineage of Yehudah and Lewi. Okay, and so there's this instruction for Naphtali's bloodline to be united with Lewi and Yehudah. So that's the prophetic work that he gave to his children. The testament of Yehudah bears in chapter 25, verse 2. It tells the blessing that Yahuwah gives to each of the tribes. Okay. Now, I'll read this particular verse and then I'll point out what Naphtali's portion is. Okay. And Yahuwah blessed Lewi and the angel of the presence me, the powers of glory Shimon, the heaven Reuben, the earth Yissachar, the sea Zebulun, the mountains Joseph, the tabernacle Benjamin, the luminaries Dan, Eden Naphtali, the sun Gad, the moon Asher. All right. So here he is telling his family that what portion, what blessing that each tribe receives. And the blessing that the tribe of Naphtali receives is the land of Eden. That is their blessed portion, whereas the mountains are the blessed portion for Joseph, and so forth, as I read. But you can see here, Naphtali, specifically through Yehudah's mouth, Judah's mouth, specifically is Eden. So therefore, we know that you have Eden, and within Eden is the Garden of Eden. So therefore, only someone of that tribe can that portion of even the garden itself can be blessed with. Okay. All right. So moving along. Now here that established the basis of the second Hawa being prophesied to come through the tribe of Naphtali. Now we can see here at that time when y'all gave me those verses to look up, I hadn't quite got to the part about, King Hiram of Zor until about a month later when he told me to look up King Hiram of Zor, okay, and the city of Tyre, which is Zor, Tyre. In Hebrew, you say Zor. In English, we say Tyre, the city of Tyre. But I'm going to say Zor for the sake of the language, okay? Now, we move to 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 12. 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 13 and 14 and 46. And 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 11 through 14. Now here, this is where he showed me where the process of the uniting Naphtali to Lewi and Yehudah began. It began here at the time of the building of Solomon's temple. Okay, that's when it began to manifest on the earth, this prophecy. Okay, so turn to 1 Kings. Okay, I have it bookmarked. I just don't know why I can't. There. All right. See, I told you I had a bookmark. Okay. Let's start at verse. Okay, so let's establish something real quickly. King Hiram of Zor. He It says in verse 1 of chapter 5, and King Hiram of Zor sent his servants unto Shlomo, that's Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father, for Hiram was ever a lover of David, or Dawid. He was a friend to Dawid, okay? He really loved King Dawid when he was alive, and he was excited to know that now his son was going to reign in his place. So he literally built Dawid's palace, King Dawid's palace, and so he wanted to help out with his son's endeavors. Now, because of that, let's see, verse 7. Let's just read verse 7. It says here, and it came to pass when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, or Shlomo, that he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be Yahuwah this day, which has given unto Dawid a wise son over this great people. And Hiram sent to Shlomo, saying, I have considered the things which you sent to me for, and I will do all that you desire concerning timber of cedar and concerning timber of fir. Okay. My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea and floats into the place that you shall appoint me, and I will cause them to be discharged there, and you shall receive them, and you shall accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. Okay, so we skip down to verse 12, and it reads, this is important, verse 12. And Yahuwah gave Shlomo wisdom, as he promised him, and there was shalom. Okay, there was peace between Hiram and Shlomo, and they two made a covenant together. And actually, you'll read in like First Chronicles, I think First Chronicles or Second Chronicles, that it was a brotherly covenant. Okay, and you'll see in the verses I'm getting ready to read that it was a brotherly covenant. Chapter 7 shows you that he is of the tribe of Naphtali specifically. Even though King Hiram of Zor, he sent out another guy named Hiram to Jerusalem to help out. He actually got called for to do a work. Okay, so this is what happened in chapter 7. And King Shlomo sent and fetched Hiram out of Zor. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Zor, a worker in brass, which is copper, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding, cunning to work all works in brass, and he came to King Shlomo and wrought all his work. Okay? So, he had a skill, and actually in the Ibri, because sometimes people think that it's the widow that was of the tribe of Naphtali, but when you look from the Ibri, you realize that it says that, yes, he was a widow's son, but he was from the tribe of Naphtali, okay? So it just clarifies that there. Now, if you go to chapter 9, verse 11 through 14, it reads like this. Now, this is how you know their brotherly covenant actually involved a bride price. Now, if you look at my bride price videos, I go into detail regarding this specifically and how that what Shlomo was doing in this case in chapter 9, okay, he was giving a bride price to King Hiram of Tsor. And obviously, as I mentioned in my other video, King Shlomo, by the word of Yah, could not give the land of Israel to a foreigner. He could only give out portions of land, like a gift, if that person or if that king or that ruler was from of Israel, was from one of the tribes of Israel. Okay, so I'm going to read it. Verse 11. Now Hiram of Tsor, the king. Now Hiram, the king of Tsor, had furnished Shlomo with cedars, trees, and fir trees, and with gold, according to all his desire. That then King Shlomo gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. Okay, he gave him 20 cities in the land of Galilee. And Hiram came out from Tsor. Okay, they don't even say King Hiram. This is like Hiram came out from Tsor to see the cities which Shlomo had given him, and it pleased him not, and they pleased him not. And he said, "What cities are these that you have given me, my brother?" And he called them the land of Kabul, which means sterile, actually, unto this day. And King Hiram, doesn't say king, and Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold, which is 120 talents of gold. Okay, so you see there's an exchange of land from the area of Galilee, 20 cities that was given to King Hiram. And you'll see in my bride price video, I mentioned that King Shlomo was giving him a bride price to probably marry, one of his daughters or something. Okay, or maybe have, maybe so. Okay, or maybe have one of his sons. But anyway, all right. So we migrate there. You can see here that there's a brotherly covenant established between King Hiram of Tsor and King Shlomo. So now there's going to be exchange of marrying sons and daughters between the two perpetually, because it's a covenant they made. They made a brotherly covenant, and that brotherly covenant wasn't supposed to be broken. Obviously, if you go into, I believe, First Chronicles, you see that the city of Tyre did break that brotherly covenant with Jerusalem, with Yehudah, and they get punished for it. Essentially, historically, Tyre gets wiped off the face of the earth. Okay, you go through the History Channel, you see what happened to the city of Tyre, Tsor, and it's because they broke the covenant with Shlomo's lineage by making themselves later on down the line enemies against Israel, against Yehudah. But that's because different rulers were ruling. Okay. I'm going to mention something very critical here later on when I get to it. Okay, so now we can go on to the next portion I want to just show you is that Psalm chapter 87, verse 1 through 7 shows the dwelling places of Yaakov, and that the city of Tsor was one of the dwelling places of Israel. Okay, so if someone says, well, but Tyre was a land of Phoenicians. Phoenicians is a general term. It's no different than someone calling you an American. Okay, even if you have a certain ethnicity, your tribal affiliation, because you were born and raised in a certain nation, you get called that particular name. Okay, if you're born and raised in North America, you get called American, even if your ethnicity is specifically of a certain tribe. Okay, so even though it's considered a Phoenician town, based on scripture, based on Psalms 80, chapter 87, verse 1 through 7, it was one of the dwelling places of Israel. Okay, so just to keep that in mind. Looking through my notes here. Okay, some other proofs here. One of the strongest cases, and it just dawned on me today. This is why The disciples, Yeshua's disciples, knew about him being the bridegroom because it was, and him being in Galilee, doing his ministry work in Galilee, working the fields of Galilee, essentially, because they knew the prophecy about where the bride would come from. And that's why Yeshua did his ministry in the area of Galilee. That's all you see all the time. You know, he went to Capernaum in Galilee. He went here in Galilee. He went to Nazareth in Galilee. He went there in Galilee. Okay, it's because it was the land of the bride. And the disciples knew it because in the original scriptures, in Psalm 45, it clearly tells you that 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 the bride comes from there. Okay, that the queen comes from there. So, as I mentioned in my most recent video, okay, I'm going to go over to Psalm 45. So this is just an overview of like all, I'm like I said, I'm not going to go into detail on everything because this video is already long as is, okay? And it would be probably way longer if I tried to go through every single thing. Okay, so in the Peshitta, Psalms 45, we read in the Peshitta, Holy Bible translated. It talks about the king's daughter. Obviously, this is the Melchizedek, the priest king, because he has incense garments. You know, his garments are smelling of incense from the temple. So he's been doing temple work. I'll start at verse 8 and read it from there, okay? Verse 8 of chapter Psalm 45 reads, Myrrh and cassia and storax, make all your garments fragrant from the excellent temple, and from my presence they have gladdened you. The daughter of the king stood in glory, and the queen at the right hand in clothing of gold of Ophir. Hear, my daughter, and see, and incline your ear, and forget your people and your father's house, for the king will be ravished with your beauty, because he is your Adon. Worship him. And the daughter of Tsor, Tyre, shall worship him with offerings. The rich of the people will entreat your face, okay, her face, and all the glory of the king's daughter, because the way he tried to word the sentence, the way it reads in Ibri, it should be like the rich of the people will entreat your presence or your face, okay? So that's why I read it that way. So if you go back there, you go, well, it says your face will seek the rich of the people. It's because what the Ibri actually is saying. Okay, verse 13. All the glory of the king's daughter is from within. She has woven her clothing in fine gold. She will go with offerings to the king, and the virgins will bring her train, okay, her wedding train, after her. And they will go in joy and sweetness, and they will enter the temple of the king. Instead of your fathers will be your sons. He has made them rulers in all the earth, for your name will be remembered in every generation. Therefore the nation shall confess you to the eternity of eternities. Okay, so there you clearly see that the king's daughter is referring to the daughter of Tsor. Okay, so verse 11 to verse 12 gives it away. The king is ravished with her beauty. Okay, ravished means a strong desire, like a passionate desire, like somebody wanting food or intimacy. Okay, that's what the Hebrew word is. It means like a strong desire. And it says, because he is your Adon, worship him. And the next verse says, the daughter of Tsor, the daughter of Tyre, shall worship him. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next verse. So some more evidence that this union, this kingdom marriage alliance actually is prophecy to be fulfilled for joining the southern kingdom of Yehudah and the northern kingdom of Israel. That, because remember, Israel divided into two parts. This is how they will be joined back together again through this kingdom marriage alliance with the high priest king, okay, the Messiah, and because he's of the lineage of King Solomon, and his bride queen, who will be a daughter of Tsor, okay, a lineage of King Hiram of Tsor. All right. And we'll show this in Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 19. So we'll go to Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 19. Cain. Okay. 37. Okay. Now you probably have seen this chapter a lot, around about the bones coming together. If you go down to verse 19, it reads, "Say to them, thus says Jehovah," okay, or this one says Adon Hadanim, like Lord of Lords. "Behold, I take the stick of Joseph in the hand of Ephraim and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and I put them with the stick of Yehudah, and I shall make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand." Okay. So these sticks actually represent the word for stick. Here's the interesting thing. The word for stick in Hebrew is the word for tree. Now, where do you hear in the scripture about the 2 olive trees? Okay, just search up the 2 olive trees, because the word for stick here is also the same word for tree. Okay, so these 2 trees representing 2 people come together, one from Joseph, okay, which is actually a code name from Zion. Okay, the Joseph and Zion have the same gematria number. Joseph and Zion have the same gematria number. And if you look up the Testament of Naphtali, you'll see that Naphtali is that Rachel wanted a son like Naphtali, and Yah gave her Joseph. I'll repeat again. Rachel, okay, Jacob's wife, Rachel, she wanted a son exactly like Naphtali, because it says in the Testament of Naphtali, she loved Naphtali as a baby and as a boy. And she prayed to Yah, and Yah gave her Joseph. Okay, so you can see here that even though it doesn't say Naphtali, that there's a hidden element to this as well. Okay. Let's see. Another example, okay, say Joel chapter 2, verse 16. Joel chapter 2, verse 16 reads, "Assemble the people, hallow the church," or the assembly. "Assemble the elders and gather the young men and those nursing the breast. The bridegroom shall come out from his bedroom, and the bride from the house of her bridal chamber." And if you know anything about Hebrew weddings, it's a wedding first, consummation in the bride chamber, okay, then wedding feast. It's wedding first, consummation, then wedding feast. So, or they call wedding supper. So here it shows that the bridegroom and the bride are coming out. He's coming out from his bedroom, obviously, because that's where he dwells. But for her, it's her bridal chamber. Okay, and the bride comes out from the house of the bridal chamber. And I mentioned in the video about Psalms 45 that the temple, within the temple, is the Holy of Holies. And the Holy of Holies is the bridal chamber, which represents the Garden of Eden. According to the book of Jubilees, the Holy of Holies on earth was the Garden of Eden. Okay. Now, let's also look at Genesis chapter 49, verse 11. And you'll see that the Messiah, known as the vine, receives also another vine as his bride / wife. Okay, let's go to Genesis chapter 49. But this one is about the prophecy concerning Yehudah. And you've probably seen this before. Verse 11. Okay. Okay, so verse 11 here. Let me go back to mine. Oh. It reads here, binding his fowl to the vine, and his donkey colt unto the vine, unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. I'll read it again. This is regarding Yehudah, the prophecy regarding Yehudah. Binding his fowl, which is a female donkey, unto the vine. Remember, the vine is the Messiah, Yeshua. And his donkey colt, that's the boy donkey, the little boy donkey, okay, that he put they put garments on it, but he sat on the female donkey. The colt, he did not. They put the garments on the colt. If you look in the Besorah, okay, in the book of Matthew. I'll start back from the beginning, okay. Binding his female donkey fowl unto the vine, which is Messiah, and his donkey colt unto the choice vine. That word choice vine is feminine. The word vine is masculine. So the vine here is referring to the Messiah, masculine, and the choice vine is referring to his queen-to-be, bride, the choice vine, which is feminine. And then it says, he washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Okay, that part is yet to happen. We know that it's prophesied in the book of Revelation that when he returns, that there will be the there'll be the time of the wine press, pressing out the wicked, like a wine press. Okay. You can also look at John chapter 15, verse 15 as well. Okay, I'm pulling this up here. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is when Yeshua is talking about being the true vine, and then he later on mentions about he no longer calls them servants, but he calls them friends. Okay, I think I was just trying to show John chapter 15 in general, because he talks about being the vine. Okay, Yeshua says in John chapter 15 verse 1, he says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Okay, now if you look at also the daughter of Tsor, okay, the bride of Messiah is also called the rib in the book of the prophets, Micah chapter 4, verse 6 and 7, and Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 19. Now, if you're reading from KJV, it will say something about she that halted. That's not what it says in Ibri. It just says the rib. It literally means, the word is literally the rib in Ibri. She is called the rib. All right, so Micah chapter 4, verse 6 and 7. Okay, thus says, in that day, says Yahuwah, I will symbol the rib. Okay, it's not her that halted. And I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted. And I will make the rib, okay, not her that halted. I mean, it's just ridiculous, people. It's ridiculous how they translate. I will make the rib a remnant, and her that was cast off a strong nation. Okay, this is where the 144,000 comes from. And Yahweh shall reign over them in Mount Zion, from henceforth, even forever. All right. And it talks about the promise in the next verse, but I'm not focusing on that. I'm just gonna focus on what I'm focusing on. Okay. Let's go to Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 19. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 19. And it reads as follows. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict you, and I will save the rib, not her that halteth. Oh my gosh. I will save the rib and gather her that is driven out, and I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. Okay? So once again, you see the rib in Hebrew. The word is the rib. Okay? Now in the same chapter, Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 10, where you see from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, or really it says from the beyond the rivers of Cush, they said, my supplanted, even the daughter of the dispersed shall bring my offering. It doesn't say it that way. Okay, I broke this down in the video. It's pretty much saying that from beyond the river of Cush, my incense prayer, or her incense prayer, the incense prayers of the daughter of the dispersed shall bring her offerings to Yah. Okay, that's really what it says. And who's bringing offerings? Okay, remember that the daughter of Tsor in Psalms chapter 45 goes to worship her king, okay, with offerings. Okay, this is, you can see this here in verse 10 of Zephaniah chapter 3, that she brings forth offerings, incense prayers and offerings. Okay. Also, interestingly enough, if you look at Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 4, you see that Yah even is saying to Zion, saying to her that he wants to establish a family with her. Literally, the cliche term of that verse is a way of saying, like a man saying to a woman, hey, I want to build with you and you shall be rebuilt. You shall be built. Okay, it doesn't say rebuilt. I want to build with you and you shall be built. It's like a man saying, I want to have a family with you and you will have my children. Okay, it's another way of saying that. And that type of language is the same language you see in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 4. And also in the same chapter, verse 5, you see that this same woman will manage vineyards and gardens in the northern region of Israel, called, I think, the land of Samaria or Sharon. If you look at Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 5, and you see this corresponds directly with Song of Solomon chapter 8, where she is given vineyards and gardens to manage. Okay? Even in Song of Solomon chapter 8, you see that the Shulamite woman is given vineyards and gardens to manage. And you see this again, as I mentioned, in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 5. Okay, now interestingly enough, when I went over the video on Psalm 45, Yah helped me to understand this. Okay, the next part is the one interesting thing that Yah revealed to me as I was coming across that portion in Psalm chapter 45, verse 11 and 12, is that just as much as the queen in gold Ophir, the king's daughter, is the daughter of Tsor, the daughter of Tyre, okay, her arch enemy is likewise a daughter of Tyre, known as, that's right, Jezebel. Isn't that interesting? The very thing that Yeshua warns against in the book of Revelation, chapter 2. He knew that in the time of the bride, the heir of the bride, that the arch enemy would rise up against the bride to defile the bride, to prevent her from being ready in time for the wedding, okay? To try to stop the millennial reign of the Lamb, you know, and the bringing forth of the united kingdom of Israel. So the arch enemy of the bride of Messiah, who is the daughter of Tsor, Tyre, okay, found in Psalm chapter 45, verse 12, is the other evil daughter of Tsor, or she was also the daughter of Sidon. Okay, she was a Phoenician. She was not of Israel. She was a Phoenician. Obviously, she married Ahab, if you are familiar with that story, named Isabel. Her name is really in Hebrew is Isabel. We say Jezebel, but it's really Isabel. So hopefully if you have a child named Isabel, please rename your child. If your name is Isabel, I would pray to Yah and say, give me a new name, okay? And take on that new name. But that was her name, okay? Jezebel, Isabel, it's one and the same. Who opposes the will of the Heavenly Father for the bride. So it's not ironic that the enemy tried to hijack the bride of Messiah, who is the daughter of Tsor, with an evil daughter of Tsor, a replacement, a dual opposite. Okay, my laptop's sliding. A dual opposite of each other. Okay, the righteous daughter of Tsor, who is the bride of Messiah, who marries the high priest king and brings the kingdom of Israel back together again, versus the bride of Satan, the wife of Satan, known as Jezebel, who is also a daughter of Zor Zidon of Tyre, and her father was Baal. Okay, and she was the controlling wife of Ahab. That's the arch enemy of the bride Messiah. The complete opposite is Jezebel. All right. There's also another promise in Isaiah chapter 66, verse 9. It mentions here about a question that's being presented, that the Messiah is essentially saying he's going to be begetting offspring. Okay, it really reads in Hebrew, ha'ani, meaning the I am. Okay, so I'm going to read I'm going to read that word ha'ani as the I am. Okay, the way it is in Hebrew. Isaiah chapter 66 verse 9 reads, shall the I am bring to birth and not beget, like a child or children, says Yahuwah, or shall I who begets restrain, says your Elohim. Okay, your feminine singular, Elohim. The one main thing that has been the issue of why this has not been taught on a large scale and has not been received, because the enemy was working hard with lying scribes for centuries to hide this truth from the children of Yah, okay, from the children of Elohim, the children of light, of his light. He's been intentional in hiding this for many, many generations, and it's coming to light because we're almost there. The return of Mashiach is soon to come. And so he wants to get us, restore the truth back to us so we know what to expect. We are prepared and ready, and that the good news can go forth. I'm going to read something very interesting that ties in with that prophecy that I mentioned in Genesis chapter 49, verse 21. And once I get to that part, I'm going to end it from there. Okay. But this is what is prophesied or mentioned about the scribes in Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. Okay. How do you say, we are wise and the law of Yahuwah is with us? Truly, the lying pen of the scribes is made for falsehood. See, Yah knew, Yeshua knew, the scribes were going to be tampering with the word, translators, etc., changing things up, hiding things, removing things, adding things. And so that's why he rebuked them so harshly in Matthew chapter 23. And I want you to keep that in mind, because all our Bibles, in terms of our translations, have been tampered with in some way. Okay. And that work happened hundreds of years before now. Okay. Nevertheless, Yah is restoring his people and bringing things to light and exposing the darkness and revealing the truth for what has always been. And the one other prophecy that's in the book of Isaiah that corresponds directly to Genesis chapter 49, verse 21, which prophesies that this female deer, would be sending forth the Basora, the good news out, is also mentioned again in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 9. And it reads, and I broke it down from the Hebrew. And you'll see, there's a song for this too. I might sing the song a little bit. Upon a high mountain, get you, that's feminine singular, okay, feminine singular, get you up, preaching bearing joyful good news. The word for that is beseret, which is plural for besora. I'll read it without without pausing after I'm done, okay? I'll reread it. Lift up, feminine singular, with power, your voice, preaching, bearing good news. Besereth, which means besora in plural form. Yerushalayim, lift, feminine singular, meaning you, feminine singular, lift up. Do not fear. That's feminine singular. Okay, so talking directive, you, feminine singular. Do not fear. You say, feminine singular, to the cities of Yehudah, behold your Elohim. Okay, so she is saying to the cities of Yehudah, behold your Elohim. Okay, I'll read it without pausing. It says, upon a high mountain, get up you, preaching, bearing, joyful good news, Zion. Lift up with power your voice, preaching, bearing good news, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Lift up, do not fear. Say to the cities of Yehudah, behold your Elohim. Okay? And that corresponds directly with the prophecy regarding the one woman of Genesis chapter 49, verse 21, where it says, Naphtali is a female deer sent out, similar to a dart or a weapon, the giver of beautiful, brilliant, wordy speech. And in that same verse, coded as, continue speaking the covenant, the cross, and teaching worship. Reveal what the power of his worship teaches, to cut off or rightly divide destructive teachings, and show the life of the covenant son. The chief, mighty leader, he acts to destroy intimidating, sharp speech. Okay, so you see here in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 9, Zion is being instructed, okay, to preach the good news. Isaiah chapter 59, verse 20, lastly says, he shall come to Zion, a kinsman redeemer, and to them returning back or repenting from transgressions in Yaakov, oracles of Yahweh, or declarations of Yahweh. Okay? So, I'm going to close it out with this hidden prophecy that you can find in the names. You can find in the names of the righteous women of old. There's a hidden prophecy. Wrong binder. And I'm going to read that to you. And we're going to close it out from there. So you can even find prophecies in the names. If you follow the order in which they're mentioned in the scriptures, the prophecies in the names of people, because like I said, Hebrew is that deep. Ibri is that deep. So here we have about, I think, 13 women mentioned here. There's a hidden prophecy about the Messiah, the bride of Messiah. I'm sorry, about the bride of Messiah. Start with Hawa, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, Bilhah, Rachel, Zilpah, Miriam, that is Moses' sister, Deborah, Ruth, Abigail, Bathsheba, and Shulamith. Okay? And based on the meaning of their names, you form this sentence in this order. The bride of Messiah. She is a life giver and queen with captivating beauty, who was once a weary, timid ewe, as myrrh dripping, acting rebelliously, but she became a speaker of the word and a friend to her kinsman redeemer. My heavenly Father joyously gave this daughter as a promise to his son. She brought him peace, prosperity, and welfare to his kingdom. That is the prophecy within the names. So with that, that's a summary of probably about, 10 videos in one. So you have a lot of scriptures you can go through. Look up the Hebrew, look up the Aramaic, okay? Look up both. Pray, seek the Father's face, okay? And with that, be blessed, okay? And with that, I say, officially, shalom, shalom, and shalom. Shalom.